Right, hello. So my name is Nahrahel. This is my presentation for Gen Ed 1038 Sleep. I'm currently studying economics here at Harvard College. So the core question that we're really going to be looking at and exploring here is how does sleep, specifically sleep apnea and fatigue, affect truck drivers, and whether the health, safety, societal impacts, historical context, and policy solutions related to this issue. And this is actually very interesting and it hits home, and I care about this a lot because my dad is actually a truck driver and has been right for 2 decades. You're traveling across the U.S. Essentially every week, right? So there's also a lot of relevance to this nationally and internationally. So the scope of this here, domestically, we can look at fatal to the driver truck crashes. 1/3 of those are fatigue related, right? And fatigue is then the second leading cause of fatal motor vehicle crashes, killing 7,000 people per year. That is right below drunk driving and right above distracted driving. So this was actually taken from our lecture that we had on this on drowsy driving. And then sleep apnea, it's very prevalent. 15 to 30% of commercial drivers experience that and have that. And this is disproportionately affecting aged male drivers 30 to 50 years old within the trucking industry. And this does have a global impact from the US to Australia to Europe to even South Korea, right? Like this is extremely important as trucking helps really with everything, including in global supply chains, right? So the world kind of goes round and we get our products because of industry for the most part. So some historical context: the 90s, sleep related crashes begin really being systematically documented, right? And then in 2009, NTSB begins issuing formal recommendations for obstructive sleep apnea screenings. But these were recommendations, not like hard law. So they weren't always necessarily followed. And then there was really increased importance and emphasis on OSA treatments such as CPAP, right? Continuous positive air pressure. That is really what is able to help individuals. And it was seen to be significantly important. It reduced crashes by approximately 72% as studied in 2010. And then present day, there's just a ton of gaps, a lot of gaps within the health space, and really looking to both the health standards with the actual industry itself. Very complicated. So then regarding health and safety consequences of this untreated OSA for all individuals, not just truck drivers, right? This is associated with increased hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and reduced lifespan among drivers. This was seen by the national academies in 2016. There's a safety risks, right? Not just the drivers, but those who are on the roads, pedestrians and other individuals. But crash risks increases so much, fivefold as a result of really fatigue there. So then regarding the societal impact of all this, 20 billion economically annually, right? And this was in 2021. That number is only going up. For example, in Australia, 250 fatalities annually from heavy vehicle crashes, which is way too many. Fatality risk is by an extra 300% when essentially a crash involves significantly a larger vehicle in these experiences here. So this is very important. There's been many different past interventions, right? And some of the biggest ones would be compliance issues, right? Basically, these CPAP therapy recommendations are made and they actually help. But the thing about it, though, is only 50% remain compliant long term of the individuals and the right drivers that are prescribed to do something like this. And then there's also the regulatory weakness. This isn't mandatory, right? So now it has to be an opted in process, which most people won't do because it's extra friction, it's extra stuff to do. And then there's, of course, the economic barriers, cost constraints. Not everybody is UPS or FedEx that is now just able to just take like a 5%, increase in costs for them to operate their trucking company, and maybe have to pay drivers more, or maybe they have to pay drivers less in order to accommodate for stuff like this. So here are some policy solutions that researched and thought of as well. And this is looking at three different buckets. Implementing a health criteria that would essentially mandate OSA screenings for drivers that have a certain higher risk criteria, which would essentially be for those that have a BMI of greater than 30, neck circumference of greater than 17 inches, right? Because obstructive sleep apnea, that is especially prevalent to those who have potential obesity and things like that, right? So then mandating that for those who fit within some of those health criteria, and then essentially incorporating telemedicine to help make this more widespread, but then revising the actual hours of service metrics by implementing artificial intelligence into the driver's tracking devices, which are the ELDs, electronic logging devices, in order to really monitor fatigue in live time, so that the moment someone is at their maximum amount of efficiency in hours and that's done, they'll be able to be notified to stop and they can't go any further. Maximizes hours, minimizes risk, and then subsidize the CPAP adoption, right? Because economically speaking and whatever, right? Humans are rational agents who essentially make decisions based off of a set of incentives. And if, the benefits outweigh the costs, they're going to do it. So now doing subsidies for companies will help dramatically. So now a timeline for this would be about 4 years, right? Policy development, tech, stakeholder feedback, regulatory approval, funding, implementation, and then evaluation. Some barriers to all of this. The cost would increase costs, might get a lot of pushback. Driver shortage, rural areas might have a harder time implementing stuff like this. And then there's the AI and technology and monitoring me stuff that comes into it, which is privacy, data, and security. So now the way we address these things is regarding the cost thing, that's by the subsidies, right? So then that will really help. In regards to the driver shortages that might occur, it would then really be best to help by streamlining the licensing process. And then this would really just have to be a straightforwardness with privacy and data, and really making sure that people are opting into that and not being done without their knowledge. And then role access, this is through additional telehealth services. So the positive impacts of this are pretty vast: improved driver safety, reduced accident rates, sustainable trucking, which becomes a sustainable economy in the world, and of course, a much safer public. So these are the changes to a healthier and safer transportation system. This was my research and what I've found on this subject here. So thank you.